picture this. It's early 2024. Somewhere off the western coast of Africa, a massive ship's anchor is just dragging along the ocean floor.
Sounds like the start of a disaster movie.
Right. And in a matter of seconds, it completely severs 3 vital undersea cables. Just snaps them.
Wow.
And as if that wasn't bad enough, just a few weeks later, a literal underwater avalanche, like an actual avalanche off the coast of Côte d'Ivoire, wipes out 4 more cables.
Oh, man.
Yeah, main one, WACS, SAT3, gone.
Oh.
Suddenly you have entire nations experiencing massive, just crippling internet blackouts.
Which is terrifying when you think about how reliant everything is on that connection.
Exactly. Welcome, everyone. You are listening to a deep dive into Africa's sweeping, multi-layered battle to reclaim its digital sovereignty.
It is such a complex topic.
It really is. Today, we are looking at a really fascinating stack of sources. We've got academic papers from the Politicon Journal, policy reports from the Brookings Institution, and some in-depth tech journalism.
Yeah, and they all detail how the continent is fighting what scholars are calling technological apartheid.
Right. And our mission today is to examine this from the ground up. I mean, starting at the physical cables at the bottom of the ocean, all the way to, like, a female food trader in Benin using an app to scale their business.
It covers so much ground.
It does. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, to really understand digital sovereignty, we have to recognize that the internet is not some invisible, weightless cloud, right?
It's physical hardware.
Exactly. It is incredibly physical, and for Africa right now, it's incredibly fragile. The sources make it clear that while anchor drags and, seismic events cause the immediate blackouts, there is a looming secondary threat baked into the hardware itself.
And that's the great power competition, right?
You got it.
Now, just to be completely clear for you listening, we are strictly reporting what our sources outline here. We're not taking any sides.
Right.
But the academic papers detail these rising tensions between the U.S. and its Western allies on one side and China and Russia on the other.
Yeah, and both sides hurl mutual accusations of cyber sabotage and false flag operations regarding global communications.
Which is a huge problem for African nations because they're pointing out that they risk getting caught right in the crossfire.
Because their physical infrastructure lacks the massive redundancy, the sheer number of backup cables that places like Europe enjoy.
So if one goes down, there isn't another one right there to take the load.
Exactly. Which brings us to the core concept the scholars call technological apartheid or digital colonialism.
Those are maybe terms.
They are, but they fit. I mean, even as the world races into the AI age, sub-Saharan Africa has less than 30% broadband penetration.
Less than 30%? That's wild.
Yeah, and more critically, the infrastructure they do have is heavily financed and owned by external powers, primarily Western or Chinese tech giants.
Right.
So it's a classic dependency trap. The scholars argue that if you do not own the physical pipes carrying your nation's data, you do not get to make the rules governing that data.
Okay, I understand the dependency argument, but let me push back on the economics of this for a second.
Right.
Because building submarine cables is, well, it's mind-bogglingly expensive.
Oh, absolutely. Billions of dollars.
Right. Like, we're looking at Meta currently building To Africa, which is this massive 45,000-kilometer subsea cable.
The longest in the world, actually.
Yeah. So if it is just too expensive for a single African nation to build that themselves, isn't it actually a good thing that global big tech is willing to foot the bill to get the continent online?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like owning the cars, but someone else owning all the roads. You still get to drive.
Well, what's fascinating here is that while the capital investment is desperately needed, outsourcing your entire digital circulatory system creates immense vulnerability.
How so?
Well, think about it. If a single foreign tech company decides to throttle bandwidth or change its terms of service or even pull out entirely due to geopolitical pressure.
Oh, wow. The entire national economy could just go dark.
Exactly. The African solution outlined in the reports isn't to reject these foreign-funded cables, though. It's to rapidly build sovereign backups.
So they're building their own roads, essentially.
Yeah. They are heavily investing in internal terrestrial overland cable networks. Those are vastly easier to defend and repair than undersea lines.
That makes total sense. You don't need a submarine to fix a cable on land.
Right. And furthermore, the upcoming African Space Agency is actively exploring integrated satellite resources. So if the ocean cables are compromised, the continent's internal communications don't just collapse.
So the physical hardware, the roads themselves, must be secured. But roads are really only useful if the destination is safe.
That is a great point.
Which brings us to the data centers. We need to look at where the data actually rests once it comes off those cables, and crucially, whose laws actually apply to it.
This is where sovereignty transitions from a hardware problem to a legal one. And the numbers here are stark. Africa has 18% of the global population, right?
Right.
But it currently houses less than 2% of the world's data center capacity.
Wait, 2% for 18% of the world?
Yeah, which means the vast majority of African data government files, health records, financial transactions, sits on servers completely outside the continent.
And the Brookings reports highlighted this truly fascinating legal precedent to explain why foreign storage is so dangerous. It involved a Canadian citizen suing the U.S. government over Google privacy.
Oh, right. This is such a clear example.
It really is. So this Canadian was using a standard Gmail account to make anonymous posts criticizing U.S. policy.
Pretty common internet behavior.
Exactly. But because the actual servers storing that data were located in the United States, the data fell entirely under the U.S. Stored Communications Act.
Right. The physical location dictated the law.
Yeah. Homeland Security didn't even need to coordinate with Canadian law enforcement. They just simply compelled Google to hand over the user's private information, their location, identity, everything.
Because the server physically sat on American soil.
Right. For foreign governments, that legal loophole is terrifying. If your citizen's data sits on a server in Virginia or Frankfurt, it is subject to foreign law, completely regardless of their passport.
It perfectly illustrates the jurisdictional vulnerability that is driving this massive legislative pushback across the continent.
South Africa's response has been pretty aggressive, hasn't it?
Very. They rolled out the Protection of Personal Information Act, or POPIA, and they paired that with a national data and cloud policy.
Okay, so what does that actually do?
They are legally mandating that government data must remain on digital infrastructure located within South Africa's borders. And uniquely, POPIA also protects what they call juristic persons.
Wait, juristic persons. So they're extending human privacy rights to corporate entities.
Yes.
I imagine that forces global tech firms into an absolute compliance nightmare.
It really does.
Because if a South African company uses, say, Google Workspace, Google can't just lump that data in with a random user in California. They have to literally geofence the corporate data and build a parallel, localized compliance structure just for South Africa.
Exactly. And the sources say the penalty for failing to do that is huge. Up to 10% of their global turnover.
10% globally. That is a massive assertion of digital sovereignty.
It is. But here's the reality. Mandating data localization is one thing. Actually affording the multi-million-dollar data centers to store it is another.
Right. The physical buildings and servers are incredibly expensive.
Exactly. For many smaller African nations, building sovereign server farms just isn't economically feasible. And that is where we see a brilliant workaround emerging. The data embassy.
Okay, a data embassy. Are we talking about like a literal server rack sitting next to a diplomat's desk in a foreign capital?
Not quite a physical desk, but the legal mechanism is identical.
Oh, interesting.
Modeled after strategies used by Estonia and Luxembourg, a data embassy involves a bilateral treaty. A country stores its highly sensitive data in a secure server located in another trusted country.
Okay.
But legally, that server space is granted diplomatic inviolability.
Wow. So it's treated like foreign soil.
Yes. The host country's authorities cannot access it, search it, or seize it under any circumstances without explicit permission, even though it physically sits on their land.
That is so smart. And we are seeing this play out with the Ghana-Rwanda digital bromance, as they call it, right?
Yeah.
Where they share infrastructure while legally walling off their sovereign data.
Yeah, it's a great partnership.
And Morocco just announced this massive 500-megawatt AI infrastructure project right on the Atlantic Ocean. It's entirely powered by renewable energy, and it's designed to act as a secure data embassy for the surrounding region.
Which is a huge step forward.
But let me throw a wrench into this. Even with an ironclad diplomatic treaty, if the physical servers and the cloud architecture are owned and operated by Amazon, Microsoft, or Google, and they currently control 60% of global cloud spending, aren't you basically just swapping one landlord for another?
That's a very valid concern.
It's like getting a free high-tech security system installed in your house, but the bank holds the master passcode.
That is a perfect analogy for what analysts call debt leverage, and the vulnerability is very real. The sources point to a really concerning historical example where France's national health platform was embedded into Ghana's digital infrastructure.
Oh, I read about this.
Yeah, analysts explicitly linked this technical arrangement to France's broader role in restructuring Ghana's financial debt.
So they were tied together.
Exactly. When digital dependency is bundled with national financial distress, data essentially becomes collateral.
Wow.
So true sovereignty isn't just about having a treaty. It requires harmonized Pan-African legal frameworks and ultimately African-owned infrastructure.
So if data centers are the storage, we need to look at what is actively processing all that information. We are moving up to the artificial intelligence layer.
The buzziest layer of them all.
Definitely. How is all this data actually being used to train the next generation of tech?
Well, remember that 18% of the global population figure we talked about?
Yeah, Africa's share of the world.
Despite that massive demographic weight, African data accounts for less than 4% of the data sets currently used to train global AI systems.
Less than 4%.
That's all.
That is wild.
And this is the root of what the Politicon Journal calls algorithmic colonialism.
Algorithmic colonialism.
Yeah, the top large language models, the LLMs driving the global AI revolution, they only support about 42 African languages. That leaves a staggering 98% coverage gap.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about how often you, as a listener, might use an AI tool to draft an email or, summarize a document or just search for information.
People use them constantly now.
Right. Now imagine if every single time you typed a prompt, the AI fundamentally misunderstood your cultural context, misread the local political sentiment, and gave you advice that was practically alien. It's like learning to navigate a city using a map where 98% of the streets are completely blank space.
Or where the map misidentifies a river as a highway because the cartographer never actually visited the terrain.
Exactly.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the reason these algorithms fail so spectacularly isn't just a lack of computing power in Africa. It is a fundamental flaw in how the technology itself is built.
What do you mean?
Well, a researcher from the United Nations University noted that AI algorithms are developed in the global north with the underlying assumption that data is neatly structured, digitized, and complete.
Oh, I see.
But in many African contexts, historical data might be oral, it might be handwritten, or it might exist in languages without massive Wikipedia footprints for the AI to just scrape.
So the models just don't know how to function in an environment where information is unstructured or missing.
Exactly. The AI assumes if it's not digitized, it doesn't exist.
Which is exactly why African nations are realizing they basically have to draw the map themselves.
They do.
There is a major continental push for a Pan-African AI sovereignty agency, which is heavily inspired by the EU's AI office.
It's a really ambitious project.
Yeah, the objective is to pool multinational resources to build cultural data libraries and public foundation models. They want algorithms that actually interpret African languages and priorities correctly, because the economic upside is staggering.
Oh, the potential for growth is massive.
The UN projects that AI integration could provide a $15.7 trillion boost to the global economy. $15.7 trillion. And specifically, it could accelerate the Sustainable Development Goals.
And the UNU study gives incredible examples of this already happening on the ground. It's not just theory.
Like what?
Scientists in South Africa have used localized AI models to predict COVID-19 peaks before they even spread.
That's amazing.
Yeah. They are using AI to forecast complex wind speeds to optimize renewable energy grids. They're predicting floods and droughts to protect fragile agricultural sectors.
Which is crucial for food security.
Absolutely. And they're even analyzing localized data to predict the outbreak of political conflict, giving governments a chance to actually intervene and prevent violence.
But again, those predictive models only work if the AI actually understands the local environment.
Precisely. And that brings us from the background algorithms to the user interface, the layer people actually interact with on their phones every single day.
The public square, social media and digital commerce platforms.
Right.
Africa is increasingly rejecting the dominance of foreign platforms that just don't serve their specific needs. Enter homegrown solutions like NineJawap, which is a Nigerian digital platform that launched in 2024.
NineJawap is a really fascinating case study in localized design. They recognized early on that global platforms are optimized for endless scrolling and ad revenue.
Which doesn't really align with what their users actually need. Right. The sources highlight that NineJawap deliberately removed opaque recommendation algorithms entirely. And if you think about the mechanics of that, it makes perfect sense for the region.
It's super practical.
Yeah, an algorithmic feed like TikTok or Instagram is constantly preloading heavy video content in the background just to guess what you might want to see next.
Right, it's very data intensive.
So if you were on a strict, prepaid mobile data plan, that background refreshing will burn through your expensive data in an hour. By switching to a simplified chronological approach and a mobile-first design, 9JOAP literally saves users money.
That's a huge selling point.
Plus, they integrated a marketplace directly into the platform with monetization plans, like their leader tier, so creators can actually earn a living without needing millions of viral views.
It is entirely about keeping the value creation strictly within the continent, and this ties directly into international trade law, specifically the AfCFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Area.
Right.
They recently adopted a sweeping digital trade protocol with incredibly strict rules of origin.
I found this part fascinating, honestly, because how do you legally define an African digital product when computer code doesn't actually have borders?
It requires a very strict legal mechanism.
Okay.
The protocol dictates that to receive preferential, tariff-free market access across the continent, a digital enterprise must be at least 50% African-owned.
Okay, that makes sense.
But ownership alone isn't enough. It must also prove substantial business activity.
So no loopholes.
Right. You cannot just register a shell company in Lagos while your engineers and your servers sit in Silicon Valley. You have to prove you are creating local jobs, utilizing local server infrastructure, and genuinely developing the domestic digital economy.
And the stakes here go far beyond just e-commerce. We are talking about the mechanisms of democracy itself. These platforms are where political realities are shaped.
They absolutely are.
The sources detail the massive 2024 Gen Z protests in Kenya. And again, just maintaining absolute neutrality here and merely sharing the events reported by our sources, analysts noted that young Kenyans utilized platforms like X and TikTok to organize widespread demonstrations against a proposed finance bill.
It was a massive mobilization.
They bypassed traditional media entirely, educated each other on the economic impacts of the bill, and mobilized protests that ultimately forced the government to withdraw the legislation entirely.
It demonstrates the incredible mobilizing power of a digital public square. And we are also seeing this influence formalized. African influencers are increasingly acting as cultural diplomats.
Like at the ASMEA summit, right?
Yes. Events like the African Social Media Influencer Summit in Addis Ababa bring together massive creators like Wode Maya to strategize on using digital reach for tangible economic integration across borders, rather than just chasing algorithmic clout.
It's incredible how these platforms are reshaping democracy, but aren't they a double-edged sword? I mean, the Brookings Institution research points out the dark side of this power.
Oh, certainly. An unregulated public square is a massive vulnerability.
We've seen foreign and domestic actors weaponize these platforms, spreading coordinated disinformation to erode trust during elections.
It happens all over the world.
And on the flip side, when governments feel threatened by that mobilization, they often respond with incredibly blunt instruments, like literally shutting down the entire internet or throttling social media access. Uganda was cited in the reports as a notable example of this tactic.
It is a really delicate balance between stopping disinformation and descending into state censorship.
Right.
The solution proposed across the academic sources is context-informed local regulation. Frameworks like Nigeria's Data Protection Act aim to legally curb malicious actors and protect user data, but without giving the state a kill switch for civil liberties.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground today. From the geopolitics of submarine cables to the legal intricacies of data embassies, the tokenization of AI languages, and the rules of digital trade.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But let's bring this all the way down to the grassroots level. What does all of this macroeconomic policy actually mean for an individual person just trying to make a living?
For that, the Brookings Institution's study on micro-entrepreneurs in Benin's informal agri-food systems offers an incredible window into the reality on the ground.
This study blew me away. We are looking at semi-rural markets in Benin, where 80% of the food traders are women.
80%?
Yeah. These are individuals operating almost entirely in the informal economy, yet 49% of them have actively adopted digital technologies, like mobile money and communication apps, to trade their agricultural products.
And the economic mechanisms triggered by that adoption are just staggering. The traders using digital tools report a 50% increase in trading frequency and overall volume.
A 50% boost just from using an app.
Exactly. They can coordinate with suppliers instantly, they reach a broader customer base without physically traveling, traveling as far and drastically increase their daily productivity simply by leveraging a smartphone.
But the barriers they have to overcome to get those results are punishing. The study breaks down the exact costs. 54% of these digital adopters face internet connection costs that eat up 20% or more of the national minimum monthly wage.
20%. That is a massive tax on doing business.
Imagine spending a fifth of your entire income just for the privilege of logging on. And even after paying that exorbitant premium, 45% of them suffer from poor network quality that actively drops calls and disrupts digital payments mid-transaction.
Which is incredibly frustrating.
Plus, the data shows that adoption is overwhelmingly driven by network effects. If the other traders in your market start using modal money, you are practically forced to adopt it too, or you lose your customers, even if the data costs threaten to bankrupt you.
You can opt out.
So what does this all mean? It sounds like we keep pushing digital transformation as this ultimate silver bullet, but if it costs a fifth of a trader's income just to participate, aren't we just building a shiny high-tech economy that structurally locks out the exact same marginalized people the old economy did?
This raises an important question, and it is the exact warning the researchers emphasize. Digital inclusion is not just an infrastructure problem.
Right.
You cannot just lay down a new fiber optic cable, point to a cell tower, and declare the job done. The analysts stress that achieving true digital sovereignty requires a multi-pronged, holistic approach.
So treating the economic barriers with the exact same urgency as the technical ones.
Precisely. Governments must implement affordability policies like mandating tiered pricing models from telecom providers, and they have to pair that with strict regulations on service quality.
So the internet, it actually works when you pay for it.
Right. And critically, they have to ease credit constraints for the informal sector. If these women in Benin cannot access microfinance or alternative credit scoring, they can't afford the initial capital for the smartphone anyway.
It's a vicious cycle.
It is. If you digitize an economy without addressing those underlying structural inequalities, the technology will just act as an amplifier, widening the gap between the privileged and the marginalized.
Okay, let's take a breath and look at the sheer scale of the journey we've taken today. We've seen that Africa is not passively waiting for the future to happen. The continent is actively attempting to rewrite its digital destiny from the ocean floor up.
They really are.
They are laying down terrestrial cables and launching satellites to back up vulnerable sea routes. They are passing aggressive data localization laws like POPI and engineering brilliant legal loopholes with data embassies to protect their sovereign information.
And building their own AI.
Yes, fighting the blank map of algorithmic colonialism by pooling resources for Pan-African AI models. They are launching homegrown, algorithm-free platforms like NineJawap that actually respect users' wallets. And despite brutal economic barriers, grassroots entrepreneurs are forcing these tools to work for them.
It is a profound systemic attempt to reclaim agency over the future.
And for you listening, whether you're managing a business in Nairobi, studying in New York, or commuting anywhere else in the world, Africa's fight for digital sovereignty holds vital lessons.
Absolutely.
Because the core questions they are grappling with are the exact same questions we all need to be asking about our own digital lives. Who physically controls our data? Who writes the algorithms that quietly shape our worldview? And who actually holds the power in our digital public square?
And I'll leave you with this final provocative thought to mull over. We constantly frame this narrative as Africa playing a game of catch-up with the rest of the world, right?
Yeah, that's the usual angle.
But if they actually pull this off, if Africa successfully builds a completely sovereign, localized digital ecosystem from the hardware up to the algorithm, governed by strict Pan-African privacy laws, might they actually leapfrog the West?
Oh, wow.
By building it with intention the first time, could they avoid the highly centralized, monopolistic tech traps that the rest of the globe is currently struggling to escape?
A completely new blueprint for the internet. I love that. But I guess it all starts by making sure those fragile cables survive the underwater avalanches.
Yeah, step one.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the map, and we'll see you next time.